Hey everybody. I just want to talk about something I was concerned about today. This, I was thinking about how atheism is starting to have different denominations of itself. Funny thing about it is we all agree that the Bible is a load of crap. That it is full of fictitious stuff mixed in with either historical elements, or some atheists would say that the Bible is entirely based on astrology. But there's something that's concerning me. There's that saying that Christians believe that atheism is a religion. Now that sounds silly at first. What does a religion mean? It's a subscription to the belief in a God, in a theology. So why are you saying it's a religion? I will dare say, what if they're right for the wrong reason? At least, it's starting to look that way. This might sound bad at first, but hear me out. Obviously, it's not going to be anything like religion. It's like it in a way, but mostly different. No God, no denomination, and no God, no theology. But it does have denominations. That's the problem. That's the similarity. It has denominations. And there's another similarity. They all agree on one central thing and disagree on everything else. Those are the two similarities atheism has with religion. They have a central agreement and disagree on everything else. Let me explain what I mean by this. Like I was saying earlier, they all agree that the Bible is a bunch of crap. But they disagree on why it's a bunch of crap. Think about that for a second. They disagree on why the Bible is BS. And they will fight each other tooth and nail all over YouTube, Facebook, everywhere over why the Bible is BS. Instead of arguing religious people, they start arguing each other. Because now, I thought the atheist civil war was over. There was a huge incident on the atheist experience of Austin. And there was massive conflict on Facebook between other atheists on other places. I thought that we were safe from all those civil wars that were happening in the atheist community. Now, not obviously a violent civil war, a war of words. That's what I mean. It's being fought with words, not with weapons. Thank goodness. Because if people start hurting each other over disagreeing on why the Bible is BS, then I'll lose all faith in humanity. As if people don't already do completely stupid things in any case. So let me give a few examples on these different atheist arguments that they have against the Bible. Either God, Yahweh, or Jesus is based on the Son. They'll quote a verse somewhere in Isaiah, I think, if my memory serves me well, about Yahweh being called the Sun and Shield. The Sun is his shield, something like that. Jesus is described as being the light of the world. So they take these two verses and they build around this idea that, well, that's just, the Bible's admitting God or Jesus is the Son, right? And then you have another denomination of something that's close to that, in which they follow YouTube documentaries that talk about Jesus being the Son, like Zeitgeist or what have you, or they'll follow other pseudo scholars in which they talk about Jesus being the Son. They often would say, you have one of these factions, they would come out and say that Jesus is based on the Greek words IHS, or in other words, Sun Zeus, Solar Zeus. In case if any of you watching right now haven't heard of what that is, it's the idea that the literal word Jesus is based on Zeus. And then we go to the Greek pronunciation of Jesus as Jesus, or just Jesus itself in the Latin, and they would talk about how, well, you see, Jesus sounds like Zeus, so it's based on Zeus, right? It must be. You know, they talk about how Zeus is also born on December 25th and all that. Now, if you relate Zeus to the sun god, the Roman sun god Sol, which they were identified with each other, in a way, in a really kind of like in a synchronistic way, you could make that true, but that won't mean that Zeus is Jesus. Now, this is something that I had learned when I began my research and ultimately concluded it. How do I find the historical Jesus? What do I find all the attributes of his character laid out in the Greco-Roman myths and astronomy? What I had to do was I had to focus on the two key terms, astral theology. So this is where you get the humanoid gods and the astrological gods slapped together. So I always said this, I'll continue to say this. There was a time when the gods were completely humanoid, had no astrological characteristics. But way after religion started, from its inception in Mesopotamia, at least as far as we know it started in Mesopotamia, they were eventually ascribed to the planets. Now let me explain what happened. The planets were named after the gods. The Sumerians named their planets after the gods. The Greeks did it. The Egyptians did it. The Romans did it. So did the Indians from India. Many other cultures did it. And the list just keeps going and going and going and going. The point is, at some point, these cultures got tired of dealing with two different sets of gods with two completely different religions, and yet they share the same names. How confusing would that be? They had this system that really got people divided. And what they decided to do was, let's say the planets are the gods. So that's why Jesus is, in a way, called light of the world, and he has the solar halo behind him, because in a way he is the sun, but he's also a human. So you blend it together so everybody can be right at the same time, even if it's an oxymoron. See, Jesus is, you want to say Jesus is a son? You get to say Jesus is a son. Yeah, you over there. You want to say he's a human? You got your way too. Oh, you over there as well. You say he's the Father and the Son at the same time, even though that makes absolutely no sense to me. We'll throw that in the Bible too, because we want to get everybody to agree with each other. Christianity was set up for one simple reason: to unite the divided Roman Empire. Just bridge all the religions together, including Judaism. Judaism was a big problem to the Romans, so that was one big one they focused on for a bit. Then they focused on the other so-called pagans, and they just slapped all their different ideologies together. Christmas, for example, really comes out to the story of the winter solstice. Solstice, the Latin word sol, that's important. Sol in Latin means sun. Look it up. S-O-L. That's how it's spelled. And there would be the Dies Solis, which means Sunday in Latin. And that was the day of Sol Invictus, which means the unconquered sun. Every year from December 22nd to December 25th, he was said to be dead for 3 days because the sun would just refuse to move northwards. But on the day of December 25th, the sun would move 1 degree north. So they thought, oh, the sun resurrected from the dead, right? So they took Sol Invictus, they took that story that he had, and they gave it to Jesus in a sense. But they also ascribed Jonah, whom also shares a similar story. In Jonah 1:17, it talks about how Jonah was inside a whale. Actually, New Testament says whale, but it says big fish in Jonah 1:17. He was in a big fish for 3 days. But then on the third day, he came out of that fish unharmed. It was a major miracle. And it would seem like God saved him. Just like God resurrected Jesus from the dead, God saved Jesus from staying dead. Now, some would joke and say, well, Jesus' sacrifice is weakened. Which is kind of hilarious. I suppose in a way he did sacrifice his weekend, because he didn't actually stay dead either. So it wasn't a fully fledged sacrifice. But that didn't matter to the religious people. They saw it as a full 100% pure and raw sacrifice. So that's the astrological characteristics of this. And they ascribe that to Jesus. And I discussed in my past videos with Helios and his son Phaethon. They took the four horsemen of the four horses of Helios and the sun chariot, the iconography of the sun god in ancient Greece, and they took the story of Phaethon from Plato's dialogue to Timaeus, Malachi's story about the return of Elijah and the coming of Mashiach ben David, which means Messiah, son of David, and they gave that over to Jesus as well. But then you get down to a deified, demigod, humanized aspect of Jesus. Now we can see that in Josephus's work. He talks about how there's different people called Jesus, going by the same name in the 1st century. That's actually very important. If you research them, you can find out they were pretty much combined and slapped into the same entity. And if you look at the story of Orion, he walked on water. He was blinded, and then he got healed by the sun. It's similar to the story about how Paul, the healings of Paul, and Jesus healing other people from being blind as well. And it's also similar to how Jesus walked on water. Then you had Dionysus. He died and rose again too. And Dionysus was put on trial by King Pentheus, equivalent to Pontius Pilate. And Dionysus was primarily put on trial for claiming divinity. Even when he got out of that whole rigmarole, he got in pretty much inside of all the Greeks there. He got very popular. He's like, oh, your divinity, your claim of divinity is true. You are the son of Zeus. That's what they started thinking at the time. And the Bacchae, that's where the story is told, and it was the first play occurred in 405 BC. So this is like hundreds of years before Christianity even existed. So you can see, the reason why I brought all of this up is because I'm trying to prove a point that I mentioned earlier. Christianity is a unification of many different Roman religions into one, Greco-Roman religions in particular. But there is one key thing that we have to understand here. Notice how everything I just said. Oh, and before I conclude here, there is one thing I forgot. So let me get this said, and then I'll talk about the everything I said thing. Jesus was mentioned in the James Ossuary. Jesus, brother of James, son of Joseph. So he's there. He's mentioned in the. You can look it up. Now, yes, there are some controversies surrounding it. Like there was the IAA, the Israeli Antiquities Authority, accused Adad Golan, the person that revealed this artifact. He was the owner of the artifact at the time. He was accused of forging the inscription on a genuine ossuary that really did come from the 1st century, but the inscription was written recently. That's what their argument was. But he was cleared of those charges, albeit the judge did say that, well, even though you were cleared of these charges, does not mean that the inscription is authentic. But despite that, most scholar analysis of the inscription on James' ossuary did confirm its validity. Most scholars agree, as a matter of fact, that it is genuine. Because of that, that would confirm not only what Josephus said about Jesus, that there being Jesus, brother of James, in the Testimonium Flavianum, but it would show that there was really a Jesus, brother of James, that did exist. Someone called Jesus and someone called James were brothers that did live in the 1st century. So there's your humanoid. There's your humanoid God right there. Or should I say humanoid demigod. And he was incorporated into the New Testament. And what they did was they gave him the stories of all the other gods and all the other miracles and attributed it to him. Now that's the end game. So everything I just said does not prove any one of the atheists to be right. In a way, it proves all of them to be right. And I might say, well, that's a contradiction. How can we all be right? But they are all right. All of them are right. That's the thing here. Christianity was a combination of several religions merged into one. It took aspects of real people that existed. It took aspects of mythical people, legendary figures, miracles from other Greco-Roman gods, and they combined it into one person. That's what they did. As simple as that. And in a way, there is truth about the sun being, the sun, literally this actual sun, that the planet that we're on orbits around of was incorporated into Jesus as well. It's all there. It really is. That's why Emperor Constantine decreed that Sunday is the day of the Lord. Go look that up. He did. That's all I gotta say. They're all right. Everybody's right. There's no reason to fight each other over why the Bible was BS. They're all right. Stop fighting each other. We must stay united. Or what is the point? If we're going to stay divided like this, then perhaps religion will triumph. Hopefully I'm wrong about that, but we shall see.